Imagine living in one of the wealthiest, most beautiful cities in the ancient world. Your home has running water, actual plumbing, a luxury most of the planet will not have again for another 1,000 years. You have heated floors, bathhouses, theaters, taverns serving fresh bread and wine. Your city sits on the coast with a view of the sea and a mountain so perfect it looks like something the gods painted into the sky. Life is good, life is stable, and that mountain has not done anything unusual in 800 years. No one alive has ever seen it do anything but sit there, quiet and green, watching over the city like a guardian. And then, on the morning of August 24th, in the year 79 AD, the mountain explodes. Not metaphorically, not gradually. It detonates with the force of 100,000 atomic bombs, sending a column of superheated ash and rock 15 miles into the sky. Within hours, your entire city is buried under 20 feet of volcanic debris. Everyone you know is dead or dying, and 2,000 years from now, archaeologists will find you exactly where you fell, frozen in time, preserved in volcanic ash, your final moment turned into a statue that will be displayed in a museum for millions of people to see. This is not speculation, this is not myth. This happened to 20,000 people in less than 24 hours. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD was one of the most catastrophic natural disasters in recorded history. It erased the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum from existence so completely that for over 1,500 years, no one even knew they were there. And here is the part that should terrify you. Vesuvius is still active. It is not extinct, it is dormant. And today, 3 million people live in Naples, one of the most densely populated metropolitan areas in Europe, built directly in the volcano's shadow. The last eruption was in 1944. Geologists know it will erupt again, they just do not know when. So here's the question. If Vesuvius erupts today, in 2026, with satellites, seismographs, and evacuation plans, can you move 3 million people to safety in time? How much warning do we get? And what happens when a modern megacity faces the same force of nature that erased Pompeii in a single day? Welcome to If History Repeats. Today we go back to 79 AD, to the city that had no word for volcano and the people who had no idea what was about to happen. And then we ask, what if it happened again? And what if we are not as prepared as we think? Let's begin. Pompeii in 79 AD was not some insignificant village. It was a thriving Roman city of about 20,000 people, a resort town for wealthy Romans, famous for its wine, its fish sauce, and its access to trade routes. The streets were paved. The homes had frescoes on the walls. There were bakeries, brothels, temples, amphitheaters, and public fountains. It was civilization at its peak. And the mountain looming over the city? The Romans called it Vesuvius. They did not call it a volcano, because the Latin word for volcano did not exist yet. The concept did not exist. They had no framework for understanding what that mountain was or what it could do. And that is critical to understanding what happened next. Imagine trying to prepare for something you do not have a word for. Imagine watching a mountain behave strangely and having no cultural memory, no scientific understanding, no mythology that says mountains can explode and bury cities. You might notice the earthquakes, you might see the wells drying up, you might wonder why the birds left, but you would not think to run, because why would you? Mountains do not kill people, mountains just sit there. Vesuvius had been quiet for at least 800 years. No one alive in 79 AD had ever seen it erupt. No one had heard a grandparent tell a story about it erupting. There were no written warnings. So when the earthquake started in the days leading up to August 24th, people were nervous, yes, but not terrified. Earthquakes happened. This was the Mediterranean. The city had been hit by a major earthquake in 62 AD, and they rebuilt. They always rebuilt. So when the ground shook in the days before the eruption, most people stayed. Why would they leave their homes, their businesses, their lives because of some tremors? And then, around midday on August 24th, 79 AD, Vesuvius exploded. The technical term is a Plinian eruption, named after Pliny the Younger, who witnessed it from across the bay and wrote the only surviving eyewitness account. The magma chamber beneath the mountain had been building pressure for centuries, and when it finally gave way, the eruption was so violent that it ejected 6 cubic miles of molten rock, ash, and gas into the atmosphere in less than 24 hours. The eruption column rose 15 miles into the sky. For reference, commercial airplanes fly at about 7 miles. This column was twice that height. It was visible from 100 miles away. And then it began to fall. Pumice, light volcanic rock, started raining down on Pompeii. At first it was just a few stones, then more, then a continuous hail of fist-sized rocks falling from the sky. People ran into their homes for shelter. Some tried to flee. Some stayed inside, thinking the buildings would protect them. They were wrong. The pumice kept falling. It piled up in the streets. It accumulated on roofs until the roofs collapsed, crushing anyone sheltering beneath. Within hours, Pompeii was buried under 6 feet of pumice. But the people who died from the falling rocks were the lucky ones, because what came next was worse. Around midnight, the eruption column collapsed. All that superheated material that had been blasted into the sky came crashing back down, creating what is called a pyroclastic surge, a ground-hugging cloud of toxic gas, ash, and rock, traveling at speeds up to 400 miles per hour at temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Celsius. If you were still alive in Pompeii when the surge hit, you died instantly. Not from suffocation, not from burial, from heat so extreme that it vaporized your soft tissue and boiled your brain inside your skull before you even had time to realize what was happening. The people frozen in Pompeii, the famous plaster casts we see in museums today, they were not buried alive slowly. They were flash-heated and killed in seconds, and then buried. By the morning of August 25, 79 AD, Pompeii no longer existed. The city was gone. Herculaneum, a smaller town closer to the volcano, was obliterated even more completely. 20,000 people, maybe more, were dead. And within a generation, the location of Pompeii was forgotten. Vegetation grew over the ash. People built new settlements nearby without realizing an entire city was buried beneath their feet. For over 1,500 years, Pompeii was erased from history. It wasn't rediscovered until 1748, and when archaeologists started digging, they found something no one expected: a city frozen in time. Loaves of bread still in ovens, graffiti on the walls, bodies preserved exactly where they fell, running, praying, holding their children. And here is what that preservation taught us. The people of Pompeii were not stupid. They were not reckless. They simply did not know. They had no concept of what a volcano was or what it could do. They had no early warning system. They had no evacuation plan. They had no scientific framework for understanding that the mountain they lived under was a ticking bomb. And when it went off, there was nothing they could do. So, the question is, do we?
Before we continue, I need to stop here and be completely transparent with you. Everything you just watched is documented historical fact. The eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD, the destruction of Pompeii, the pyroclastic surges, the plaster casts of victims, the eyewitness account by Pliny the Younger, all of it is verified by centuries of archaeological research, volcanology, and historical records. There is no speculation in what you have just seen. It happened. It is real. It is on record. But what comes now is different. What comes now is analysis, a well-founded, evidence-based, scientifically grounded analysis of what would happen if Vesuvius erupted today in 2026. This is not prophecy. This is not fear-mongering. This is an honest attempt to apply modern volcanology, urban planning, and disaster response data to answer a single question: would we do better than Pompeii? And more importantly, are the 3 million people living in Naples today actually safe, or are we just as unprepared as the Romans were? Let's start with the facts. Vesuvius is not extinct. It is classified as an active stratovolcano. The last eruption was in 1944, during World War II, while Allied forces were stationed nearby. It was relatively small by Vesuvius standards, but it still destroyed several towns and killed dozens of people. Since then, the volcano has been quiet. But quiet does not mean safe. Geologists know the volcano is still alive. They know the magma chamber beneath it is still active. And they know with absolute certainty that Vesuvius will erupt again. The only question is when. So what would happen if it erupted today? Let's start with the good news, and there is good news. We have tools the Romans could never have imagined. Vesuvius is one of the most closely monitored volcanoes on Earth. The Vesuvius Observatory, founded in 1841, the oldest volcanological observatory in the world, watches the mountain constantly. Seismographs detect every tremor. Gas sensors measure sulfur dioxide emissions. Satellite imaging tracks ground deformation. GPS stations monitor whether the mountain is swelling. If magma starts rising toward the surface, we will know. Days, maybe weeks in advance. That is the theory. Here's the problem. The theory depends on the eruption behaving predictably, and Vesuvius does not always cooperate. Some eruptions have warning signs, some do not. The 1631 eruption, one of the largest in recorded history, had minimal warning. And even if we do get days or weeks of notice, what do we do with that information? Because the other thing we have that the Romans did not is 3 million people living in the danger zone. Naples is the third largest city in Italy. It sprawls across the region in every direction, and the official evacuation plan, the one that the Italian government has spent years developing, assumes we can move 700,000 people out of the red zone in 72 hours. 700,000 people, 72 hours. That is the plan, and every expert who has studied it agrees it will not work, not even close. Here's why. 72 hours sounds like a lot of time, but consider what has to happen. You have to notify everyone, and not just notify them, but convince them to leave. People do not want to abandon their homes based on a maybe. You have to coordinate transportation for hundreds of thousands of people, many of whom do not own cars. You have to clear the highways, which are already congested on a normal day. You have to find places for 700,000 people to go, shelters, hotels, temporary housing. And you have to do all of this while managing panic, misinformation, and the reality that some people will simply refuse to leave. And that's just the red zone, the highest risk area directly at the base of the volcano. The yellow zone, the area that would still be severely affected by ashfall, lahars, and infrastructure collapse, contains another 2.3 million people. If Vesuvius erupts with the same intensity as 79 AD, the yellow zone will not be safe either. But there is no plan to evacuate 2.3 million people. There is no logistical framework for moving that many human beings out of a metropolitan area in days or even weeks. For reference, when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, the city tried to evacuate 1.3 million people with days of warning. It was chaos. Highways gridlocked, people trapped. And that was with advance notice and a storm everyone could see coming. Now imagine trying to evacuate twice that many people based on seismograph readings and gas emissions. So here's the most realistic scenario. If Vesuvius shows clear warning signs, sustained earthquakes, visible deformation, gas emissions spiking, the Italian government will issue evacuation orders. Some people will leave immediately. Many will hesitate. Some will refuse outright. The highways will jam within hours. Public transportation will be overwhelmed. Trains and buses will be packed beyond capacity. Within a day, the evacuation will slow to a crawl. And if the eruption happens within that window, while hundreds of thousands of people are still in the danger zone, still stuck in traffic, still trying to get out, the death toll will not be in the dozens. It will be in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Not because we lack technology, but because moving millions of people is not a technology problem. It's a human behavior problem, and human behavior under pressure is unpredictable and slow. And then there's the aftermath. Even if the evacuation succeeds, even if most people get out, what happens next? A Plinian eruption would bury parts of Naples under meters of ash. It would collapse buildings. It would destroy roads, power lines, and water systems. It would render entire neighborhoods uninhabitable for years. The economic impact would be catastrophic, not just for Naples, but for all of Italy and much of Europe. Naples is a major port city. Its airport handles millions of passengers a year. A volcanic eruption would shut down air travel across the continent for days, maybe weeks, as ash clouds ground flights. The agricultural regions around Vesuvius would be destroyed, and insurance companies would face claims in the tens of billions of euros. But the thing that keeps volcanologists awake at night is not the eruption itself, it's the possibility that we misread the warning signs. Because volcanic eruptions aren't like hurricanes. We can't track them from space and predict exactly when and where they will hit. Volcanoes are underground, they're hidden, and sometimes they surprise us. In 1980, Mount St. Helens in Washington state had been rumbling for weeks. Scientists were monitoring it, everyone knew an eruption was coming, and then on May 18th, the entire north face of the mountain collapsed without warning, triggering a lateral blast that killed 57 people, including volcanologists who were monitoring it from what they thought was a safe distance. Volcanoes don't follow rules, they don't care about our evacuation plans. So, when people ask, would we survive if Vesuvius erupted today, the answer is, most of us would. Modern science gives us a chance the Romans never had, but not everyone, not by a long shot. And the people most at risk are the ones who hesitate, the ones who don't believe the warnings, and the ones who get stuck in traffic trying to leave. The eruption itself might kill thousands, the evacuation might kill thousands more.
So here we are, 2,000 years after Vesuvius erased Pompeii from the map, and 3 million people are living in the same danger zone, under the same mountain, playing the same game of chance. We like to think we are different. We like to believe that our technology, our science, our preparedness makes us immune to the kinds of catastrophes that wiped out ancient cities. But the truth is, we are not that different. The people of Pompeii were not fools. They were people living their lives in a place they loved, under a mountain that had been quiet for as long as anyone could remember. And when the mountain woke up, there was nothing they could do. We have more warning, we have more tools, but we also have more people. And more people means more chaos, more hesitation, more gridlock, more variables we cannot control. Vesuvius will erupt again. That is not a question. The only questions are when, how big, and whether we will be ready. If you made it this far, thank you. You are exactly who this channel was created for. Someone who is not afraid to confront the reality that nature does not care about our plans, our technology, or our cities. Someone who understands that history is not just something that happened to people in the past. It is something that could happen to us, and ignoring that possibility does not make us safe. It just makes us unprepared. If this made you think, if it left you with questions, share it with someone who also does not look away from uncomfortable truths. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. Every episode of If History Repeats takes you back to a moment that shaped the world and asks, what if it happened again? In the next episode, we go to year 1986 to a nuclear power plant in Soviet Ukraine. On a certain morning, Reactor 4 exploded, releasing more radiation than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. Today, there are over 400 nuclear reactors operating around the world, and the question we need to ask, could it happen again? And if it did, in 2026, in a world of social media, instant information, and political instability, would we handle it better than the Soviet Union did, or would we make the same mistakes? Chernobyl, the disaster we thought we learned from, and the question that will not go away. You will not want to miss it. I am If History Repeats, and history always has something to say.